don't understand how she can, part of this plea deal, the daughter can still go to law school and take the bar exam. So in my mind, I was thinking, I hope somebody brings up the fact that it's not the federal government that determines whether she becomes a lawyer, but it's the Committee of Bar Examiners. And of course they did. So then I was satisfied that they had covered all the bases. But that was another, really great experience because there were changes made to the bar exam. A lot of things looked at to try and, I guess, be certain that people were not, there was a high failure rate among students of color. So trying to find out, is the bar exam really testing what it needs to and in the way that it should?
Well, I love the San Gabriel Valley.
Welcome to the My SGV podcast.
So I grew up here and I still live in Alhambra.
I was raised in between Temple City and Alhambra.
Eventually resided in South San Gabriel.
Our mission is to capture and share the stories of the people of the San Gabriel Valley.
Monterey Park has pretty much been my whole life.
Well, I'm proud to say that I was born and raised in the San Gabriel Valley.
We believe our diversity is what makes the SGV great. And no matter where you are from in the San Gabriel Valley, you will feel welcome. All right, SGVers, welcome back to another episode of the My SGV podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If you are new here, we bring you the stories of the people of the San Gabriel Valley. And if you are a returning listener, thank you so much for spending this time with us. We do appreciate it. Well, Victoria, I actually enjoy bringing you around the San Gabriel Valley, mostly to food spots, right? And so we sort of stick to like what's close by because sometimes we have to get back, to work during the lunch hour. But have you explored, or where do you feel most comfortable in the San Gabriel Valley in terms of where you've explored or seen?
Yeah, probably the more, western areas, because that's closer to home since I live either on the outskirts or right outside, depending, how the person sees the boundaries of SGV. But yeah, so I think Pasadena I'm probably most comfortable in. And then since I've been working on the show and learning more about what the San Gabriel Valley, I have since realized that I have some family like Monterey Park, Montebello, and so I've been there quite a lot too. So just kind of like that more western area. Sure,
yeah. When I say San Gabriel Valley, I'm just used to the more western part, and I don't mean to discount or not include the entirety of the San Gabriel Valley. And anytime we put something out, like the intro or any sort of boundary, people chime in. They're like, "Oh, what about this?" Or they're very opinionated on what is included and what's not, right? But we've had shows where sort of centered around San Gabriel, maybe the mission, just sort of because that's the origin of the San Gabriel Valley, the origin of the of Los Angeles, and really Southern California. So our studio here is very close to that, and I find that the stories that originate closer to or within the city of San Gabriel, they have a deep history to this area.
Yeah.
We've had several conversations recently. So we're going to get into a conversation with a guest today who also has deep connections to this area. But before that, thank you to Paris Baguette for sponsoring the delicious pastries every week for our guests. Go check them out in the city of San Gabriel. They are delicious. They're hard to resist. Once you walk in there, you're just overwhelmed and you don't know what to choose. So go check them out on Las Tunas in San Gabriel. Say hi to Jason for us. All right, let's get to today's guest. Today's guest is as deeply rooted in the San Gabriel Valley as they come. Born at San Gabriel Hospital, she's a fourth-generation SGV native who spent her life shaping and giving back to the community she loves. From her early days attending local schools to leading a family-owned business that's been thriving since 1960, she's done it all. With degrees from USC and UC Davis, she's tackled everything from law to education and today runs an insurance agency that specializes in serving nonprofits and medical facilities. She's been at the heart of countless community initiatives, serving on the board of the California Hospital Medical Center, chairing the San Gabriel Community Foundation, and even playing a key role in California's redistricting commission. She's also the first woman to lead the California La Raza Lawyers Association. Recognized by political leaders and honored for her service, we are thrilled to introduce Jeanne Raya. Jeanne, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Russell. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. So we were speaking earlier about I got excited driving around the city or San Gabriel Valley, and every time I see your sign, I'm like, oh, we're going to talk to her. I just couldn't help but feel that every time I saw it. But.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting now going around, and I realize that people are giving me that sort of quizzical look, like, is that her?
And so we are in October. This is October, late October, and this show you may be listening or watching, and it's probably March, right? So that's going to be an interesting gap there. Yeah. But Jeanne, we always start with this question: what is your connection to the San Gabriel Valley?
Well, some of it you've already said, and I do want to give credit to Garfield Hospital because that's where I was born. Born here, I'm the fourth generation of my family to live in San Gabriel, and very strong roots in the area. If you know San Gabriel, east of the police department, east of Del Mar and east, sometimes still referred to as the barrio, but that's where I grew up. So, very strong connection there. All my family, on both sides, lived in San Gabriel. So we, at one time, I think, occupied most of West Main from Del Mar over. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everybody had a house there.
Wow.
And I grew up here on Mission Drive, so very close to La Casa Community Center. And in fact, was in childcare at La Casa at one time. So yeah, deep roots through a lot, with my grandparents and family. And I've stayed here. We have the business. It was a family business, still is. And just kind of followed my grandparents' and parents' example of being involved in community organizations, doing whatever we can to build our community, make it stronger.
I see. Just for my own curiosity and the clarification, Mission Drive is from Mission Road to Las Tunas?
It's the name changed a while back. So now it's, I guess that would be the part that now is Mission Road from San Gabriel Boulevard west up to the church maybe, and then it becomes Mission Drive. When that change was made, it actually happened that our address for our office was changed from 554 West Mission Drive to 401 South Mission Drive.
Oh, that's a big change.
Yeah, I can't explain the logic of it, but that's where we are, yeah.
I see. And that's just right by the heart of the origin of this area, right? Right by the mission.
Absolutely.
And what was early life like growing up here in this area for you?
It was very very family-centered. It was a time when anybody's parents could tell you what to do, what not to do. Kids kind of could roam freely because everybody knew everybody. And, I was just thinking about Halloween coming up, and I know kids hardly get to go trick-or-treating anymore. And we used to just, wander for blocks. So very much, just family-centered. And at the same time, there were divisions, a division in the city, a very maybe seemingly benign one, but nonetheless, here's where the Mexicans lived and here's where everybody else lived. There even, I think, is some history that the houses in the village were built originally with covenants about who could live there, racial covenants.
Can you unpack that? What does that mean?
Well, meaning that it was restricted to white people, Anglos, whatever word you choose to describe, but restricting others from living there.
Wow.
Or purchasing those homes, even though they were built and intended for people, GIs returning from World War II. So my experience is kind of protected in a sense, in that I never felt overt hostility, But at the same time, there was a sense of, here's where you are. The schools were desegregated when I was a child. I went to Washington School, whereas my parents and all kinds of other generations, went to Lincoln School, which is just south of Mission Drive, or almost on it. So going to Washington School was, I think, my first kind of sense of having one foot in each of two worlds. I think that's something you don't necessarily understand as a child, because you make friends, you're doing things in school. My parents were very forward thinking, especially my mother. My dad had the opportunity to go to college on the GI Bill. My mom did not have the opportunity to go to college, but she was just an incredibly intelligent woman. But they started us reading to us and reading at a very young age. So we were well prepared for school. Some of my friends from the community were not as well prepared, and that kind of fed into ideas that people had about Mexicans. So it was to some extent, I still think of that as having an influence on, just how I looked at the world, for how I still look at it, I guess. That sense of there's always that little bit of you're the other, no matter what you do, no matter what you accomplish. I mean, for heaven's sakes, we look at Barack Obama, and people still question where he was born, or, we see Kamala Harris referred to as a DEI hire. So I think that's been part of my experience, but in a very, I don't know if I want to say a quiet way that I would characterize it, but just it shapes you in a way, but you just kind of keep those 2 feet, going forward and try to hold on to a little bit of each world.
Mm-hmm. So a fourth generation Mexican, I think you said. Mm-hmm. So when did your family first come here?
My grandparents came here on the Raya side. My grandparents came here in 1923 to San Gabriel. So 2 brothers, my grandfather and his brother, came. The other brother headed north. So we have a whole other branch of the family in Northern California. And my grandparents stayed here. On my mother's side, my grandmother came here in 1906. She was married at the mission in, I think, 1911.
Also from Mexico?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So what was the demographics of that area? Were they also deeply rooted, or were there also first generation Mexicans coming and living there?
Oh, it was, it's like any immigrant community. There are always new people coming in. But I think a lot of our neighborhood were people who were pretty well rooted. Mostly, I would say mostly at that time, citizens, because the men were drafted into war over not just World War II, but Korea, Vietnam. And, people voted, people were civically active in the church, active in the schools.
I want to go back to your experience at Washington. I just want to, for myself, Washington is where that 5 stop sign intersection is, right?
Yes.
Which is really odd. If you've ever been there, it's strange. If there's any more than 3 cars there, you just don't know what to do.
Everybody sits there waiting for somebody to get brave. Yeah.
Okay. So you described your experience there as you had a realization that you had one foot on one side and one foot on the other. What was it that gave you that sort of perspective?
Well, I think partly that, the majority of students were white. They lived in the North. So, we still have that North-South divide to some extent. The racial demographic or ethnic demographic has changed, but we still have something of that sense. So it was what their parents did, for work, what their family experiences were, just, all the cultural observances. I don't know, just every element of how you live, just day to day, how you live, was different in some ways, in many ways, I guess I would say. But also, when you hear comments derogatory or just looking down on other people, the same people you live with, the same community you live in, that has an impact. You begin to think like, oh, is that me? Are they saying that about me? I had friends, I did a lot of things, but with, friends from school. Kids came to my birthday party, and, I looked at one of those pictures recently, and I thought, oh, this must have been really strange to them to come to a yard where there's, no fences and very simple house, very different from where they lived. But at the same time, they all came. I guess we must have had a good time. I don't remember it being unpleasant in any way, but just the little things every day. But a lot of it is just becoming aware of not everybody looking at your community positively.
So this was at a quite a young age, and you're aware of this, and it sounds like you were hearing something said about your ethnic community while you're over there, and this is sort of shaping or has shaped the trajectory of your thinking and your life. So what happens? Where does your journey go after that?
Well, I left Washington School and started school at Ramona Convent in Alhambra, which is Catholic and all girls. And that was a more diverse population, but also just, a different, a system with, strong values and really meant to raise young women to be leaders. We had to be the leaders in school. We were the only people there. So I think that is really, that was a very powerful influence in, the expectation that you would go to college. My parents always had the expectation that I would go to college. But that just, kind of kept you moving forward in that regard.
Was that during a time when they could still hit you with rulers and stuff?
I suppose they could have, but I don't recall anybody actually having that. I think our nuns were a little more enlightened. They were very highly educated women, degrees and higher ed degrees. So I think, the idea was more to shape rather than to.
Sure.
Yeah.
Scott had described, I think, getting slapped on the face. But he said it like it was normal. And then another friend of mine who had, same generation, described something similar, but as if it were nothing, Yeah.
I know it was not an uncommon experience for people.
I think the guest last week, for this show, also went to Ramona Convent.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right? Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's like two back to back.
Interesting.
I want to go back to this one thing that you mentioned earlier. Before I forget, you said it was a time when other parents could correct you. And I've heard this exact same thing from your generation multiple times. Yeah. And you say it not as if it's a bad thing.
No, I didn't think it was. I mean, now, for heaven's sakes, you're afraid to even look at somebody's child. We were in a restaurant the other day, and my husband had his back to this table, but I'm watching this kid about, I would say, 8 years old, having sort of a little tantrum over not having his device, and I don't understand that kind of, that nobody at the table, and some were relatives that, from what I could gather, nobody at the table, even in a family, felt they could say something to this child. And I think there was just a more universal set of, the children are the children and the adults are the adults. And, these adults are the people that make the rules. And not that, I'm not saying everything, the parents of my parents' generation, were just perfect parents, as nobody's a perfect parent. But just that idea that you didn't talk back to other people's moms, you didn't, you didn't break the rules of their house. If they told you it's time to go home, you went home. If, just whatever it was. And I think that really creates a stronger sense of respect and cohesion in the community, that there are some rules that are commonly accepted, and that adults are, in fact, in charge.
What, in your opinion, has led to that?
You mean to a decline, a change?
Yeah, in society, yeah.
I guess I'm not really certain. I only raised one child myself, and I think I was more open to conversation than my mother was. I was not so rigid that it's like, no, this because I say so. Although I defy any mom to tell me she hasn't at some point said because I say so. So I think I was, more open to talking, having my daughter understand why there were some rules. But at the same time, if she didn't want to accept it, it was my feeling is, sorry, but that's how it is. And I think we've just gone too far in thinking that we have to explain everything to children, that we have to have a discussion about everything to make sure their feelings aren't hurt, or I don't know. It's that, I think it's a sense of like, oh, I want my child to like me. I want my child to, my children are my friends. And I've never felt that was my role.
I see, yeah. You described your experience at Ramona Convent and having, it sounded like good faculty there, good leadership. And where does your journey go from there?
From there, I went to USC, which was kind of another culture shock in some ways, partly because there were very few Mexican-American students, handful. Also, I had been in a girls' school, for many years. So sitting in class and looking over, and it's like, oh, wait, there's a guy sitting next to me, having, of course, a lot of male professors as well.
Did you get to interact with boys at Ramona Convent? I always thought you had socials with boys' schools, Bosco Tech or something.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course, but I did not think of myself as like one of the popular girls or one of the really social girls. So, yeah, it was kind of, I don't know, maybe it was just the time, I don't know. We had dances, we went to dances. I actually had a boyfriend who went to San Gabriel High School and was Jewish.
Okay.
So that was very, his dad was an actor. Unfortunately, that friend passed away, but yeah, we weren't entirely cloistered. Still, it's a little different to have people right next to you if you're not used to speaking up in a classroom with males. Yeah.
So you're American.
Yes.
You're fourth generation. You're an American, right? You probably have cultural ties and things to Mexico, but people still see you. They see maybe your skin color or dress. I don't know, and they're like, oh, you're not American. You have this experience at Washington, and then it sort of expands a little bit at Ramona Convent, and then when you go to SC, it's more of the same, or what is?
Well, so much of that part of it, or that experience, really comes from within, because I don't think everyone that grows up similarly necessarily goes out in the world and still feels like, oh, how am I being identified? So it's I'm not sure that. Sorry, just gather that thought, but
I'm trying to imagine you as like an American, right? But people are looking at you; they don't know. For myself, I believe like I'm American, right? I watch Saturday morning cartoons. I did Boy Scouts, T-ball, all that. But when you look at me, I look Asian, right? And so, what was your experience like? Do you feel at that time that you were Mexican American, that you were an American? How did you present yourself, or how did you want people to view you?
I'm not sure that when I went to college I had that sophisticated a sense of my identity. I mean, I knew I was from a Mexican family. I also knew that, our family was part of the American Legion, same things that you mentioned, sports and so on. Not so much for me, but my brother played Little League. So yeah, in that sense, we were very much a part of the American experience. But I think going to college was coming into a group of people whose experience with people of color was very often as servants of one kind or another, nannies, gardeners, housekeepers. So in one sense, people thought I was kind of something exotic. I even had a Persian student propose to me, and I think a lot of it was him feeling out of his element as well, socially,
What does that mean, propose to you? Like, this was not your boyfriend? He was
No.
Would you want to marry me?
Well, we had gone out a couple times, just, had socialized a little bit. No, nothing of a true relationship or anything. And I've often joked, about he was obviously had a lot of money. So maybe I should have rethought that.
He was like royalty or something.
Yeah, something. I don't know what. But I think it was just that sense of, oh, here's another brown person I can kind of connect with. So I think just socially there were, different experiences. But, I dated different people. I don't think I ever dated a Mexican American.
Really?
Yeah.
By choice?
No, it just never happened.
And so who are you dating? Caucasians?
Some African Americans.
Okay.
I
Asians?
don't even I don't recall. I'm trying to think. Did
Maybe
I
there
really
weren't as
know
many.
any Asians?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. No, it was quite different. Definitely majority Caucasian.
So as we're like just talking about your history and your story, the common thread here is like your experience as a Mexican American and how people are viewing you, right? And it sounds at this time like it's maybe not as favorable or even just as equal, right? There's a climate of that they are viewing people of color differently.
Yeah, but I think it's not even necessarily how that person's looking at you, but what's going on internally, that what you think they're thinking. I think I feel that we're often we catch ourselves more doing that because I never had a problem doing things, joining things, going wherever I wanted. I mean, my parents made it easy for me to go to college. I didn't have to struggle to hold down a couple jobs and go to school full time at this, all at the same time. They wanted me to enjoy that experience. So I did have a full social experience. I don't mean to suggest otherwise, but it's those little, I guess now we refer to them as microaggressions, but it's those little nagging things that come up here and there that remind you that some people don't look at you as fully part of that social society or social group.
Do you have an example?
Yeah, actually I do. I joined a sorority because at the time that was, that was the thing to do if you really wanted to be part of a lot of the social activity. And I found out from a friend, because, you go through this whole process of being screened and them deciding whether they want you. I found out later that there were people who did not want to vote for me to join because I'm Mexican. Yeah. So I didn't know that beforehand, but somebody, did tell me afterwards.
Were you voted into this sorority?
Yes, I was.
And how did it feel when you learned that? Did you know who they were, or was it just a general statement?
I don't recall that I knew exactly who it was or that she told me who they were. The funny thing is, and and this really goes to how I have the question of how did this shape your choices. I actually became the president of that sorority in my senior year. So, I think what I do is like sort of overdue, to just, it's what I would have wanted to do. I think by nature I tend to want to pull people together, to lead, to try and get people to work together. So I make those choices even though it may not seem obvious that I'm the obvious choice, I guess I would say. Yeah.
I see. So you got into the sorority, you eventually become president. Yeah. And are there adults or mentors in your life at this point, or people that are sort of guiding your path or that you looked up to?
I can't really say that there were people who filled that role. There were people who were supportive of me, friends of my parents who had gone through, college since my mom had not gone. And my dad actually went to SC, and we were kids. He would sometimes have to drag us along with him. Because
the class.
I don't remember sitting in a class, but I do remember other things being, in the car or wait. So I assume, maybe we did sit somewhere in class. I don't know.
Wow.
But no, I don't. I think if I had to look back at who were strong influences, it would be, there were a couple of nuns from my Ramona experience that remained friends. And they were sort of, I guess I would say, guides and mentors at that point.
At that age, or just speaking for myself, there weren't a lot of Asians on TV or that I was like, oh, okay, I can be like that person, right? Were there any public figures that you were like, oh, I identify with them, I can be like that, I'm going to try and be, like that person?
No, I don't think I saw anybody. I never thought I was going to be an entertainer, so let's eliminate that category right away. There weren't a lot of political figures. There were some, but I think it's even through my young adulthood looking at people like, as an example, Dolores Huerta or the Royballs who were, in LA, government and in Congress. I don't think I ever looked at those people at that point and thought that, oh, I'd like to go to Congress, or, see myself as being a strong union leader or an activist at that level. They seemed like extraordinary people, not a regular person.
Yeah. And then you continued with your education after USC. What did you study at USC?
I was an English major.
Oh.
I guess this really goes to another thing that I was thinking about in anticipating this conversation, that it's also, gender roles. What was expected of women? What kinds of things were you expected to go in? What field? Education. That was, and I did get teaching credentials. And I taught for half a year in the Alhambra School District. And
where?
Monterey Highlands was the school. Did you go to school there?
No, but okay. I went to Hi-Ho Market often.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so education. I never thought at that point about, should I political science or business? And at that time, I think my dad actually hoped that my brother would be the one to go into business with him. I wasn't in that part of the equation. I was left to find whatever it was I wanted to do.
Sure.
And I didn't have any examples of something else. I didn't have an example of going elsewhere to school, leaving the state, going up north even. I didn't have anybody who'd had that experience.
But ultimately you did leave and you went up north.
Yeah. First I went to San Diego, worked there for a while, and just through things that we were active in the Chicano community, sort of propelled me to the idea of going to law school. I think a lot of us at that point thought we were really going to change the world if we could get a law degree. So
A lot of us, meaning your group of friends at that time.
Yeah, the people that were active in the community and trying to, create change especially for the Mexican immigrant community. I think we saw law as power, knowledge of the law as power. So I decided to go to law school and ended up at UC Davis because that was the most affordable option that I got accepted to. And it was, the school is known as Martin Luther King Hall. That's the name of the law school. And the school was very open at that time to what was affirmative action. So our class was, I think, about 40% people of color and about equal or a little more women. So it was a big change, a very dramatic change.
And you must have been very aware of that.
Oh yes, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful because, it was such a great support system. I mean, law school's horrible, or wherever you are, Scott. Are you sharing that thought? I mean, it's really hard. It's grueling, and that method of a professor, calling on you to discuss a case is terrifying.
Yeah, the Socratic method is, I think, also very beneficial, though, in learning.
Oh, yes,
right?
Definitely.
Scott went to law school not to become a lawyer, but to see if that he could do it.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. That's something interesting to know about Scott.
I think even today he doesn't describe himself as a lawyer.
Ah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I mean, of course, I'm not practicing law anymore. I haven't for many years, but what I have learned has not left me. It serves me every day in my business. It's serving me right now in, other issues that I get involved with in the community. Just having that analysis, always in the back of your mind to look at things through that lens.
Would you say that it's just law school teaches you how to think a certain way and how to view things a certain way?
Yes, I think that's really the case. And a lot of people go to law school and never practice law. They go into business, or they just practice a little bit and then decide, oh no, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. Especially, I know going into private practice is probably the toughest. I met my husband in law school, and we both worked for the state of California right when we were out of law school, and eventually came back down here and opened our own practice in San Gabriel.
Yeah.
And that's hard, especially when you want to have a family and you just have to be constantly working.
Sure.
Trying to divide up all your time.
So now your journey is back to the San Gabriel Valley. Before we get into that, though, we ask each guest to bring an item with them. What did you bring with you today?
Okay, this sort of sad-looking little artifact. This is a little derby, if you can imagine a little derby, is how it was navy blue, but it's quite it's had a long life, so it's now sort of a shade of purple. The ribbon is, no longer in a bow; it's just hanging down. This was the hat that we wore when I was a student at Ramona Convent in the high school. Oh. Our dress uniform was a navy blue blazer, a plaid skirt, the sort of traditional. And we had these little navy hats that we wore. It had the ribbon was in a bow, and then it had a feather, a colorful little feather. I don't honestly know why I kept it, except that who would want this sort of style hat at the time, even that it was still in good shape. But the thing about it is that it became part of our costume box. We've always had a costume box. And my niece was the first one to play with it. So I have pictures of her with, the hat on her head. And it's actually kind of cute. And my niece later went to Ramona. So she graduated, I think, about 20 years after I did. So I think that's right. And then, of course, the next person to have it in her costume box was my daughter, who has since gone on to do a lot of performing. And, just, I don't know, to me, it's just kind of the sentiment of we all shared that little bit of Ramona.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for bringing that in. Can I see?
Yeah, sure.
It's a wool hat.
It's wool.
I'm just fascinated that navy can turn this color.
Yeah, I guess
Wow.
Whatever oxidation or something happens over time. It does have a couple little holes where somebody had a snack. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that in and sharing that story with us. Okay, so you met your husband in law school. You both come down here and you open private practice, and you're raising a family now, or you're starting a family. So now where does your journey go?
Well, coming back was, I hadn't been away all that long, but my husband had never lived. He's from the Central Valley, Visalia. So he had never lived in, the big city of LA. It was a little overwhelming. And for a while he worked, he was with the Attorney General's office. So he was a lawyer for the Attorney General in LA. And I started my practice, and eventually he quit, and we, got into practice together. And I think my husband will be the first person to say, you always have to be doing something, which was true. That's about the time that I got very involved with the La Raza lawyers. I had been active in Sacramento, so actually I'm not I may be incorrect about the dates, the years, but all during that time when we were in Sacramento and coming back to LA, I was very involved, and that's when I became the president of the organization, which was a great experience. I traveled all over the state. We were, trying to build chapters. We were trying to get Latino judges appointed. Just working on a number of issues. Some people doing them locally, whether it was San Jose, San Diego, LA, and then some on a statewide level, and ultimately nationally. The organization, grew to where it had a national influence. It's gone by different names, so depending on kind of over time, trying to find the best name. But so I was doing that. I got during that period, got appointed to the Committee of Bar Examiners. So this morning I was listening actually to
Elizabeth?
No, I was listening to a discussion about Doe, the Orange County supervisor, and his daughter. It was on LAist, I still want to call him KPCC. And Larry Mantle was saying, well, I don't understand how she can, part of this plea deal, the daughter can still go to law school and take the bar exam. So in my mind, I was thinking, I hope somebody brings up the fact that it's not the federal government that determines whether she becomes a lawyer, but it's the Committee of Bar Examiners. And of course they did. So then I was satisfied that they had covered all the bases. But that was another, really great experience, because there were changes made to the bar exam, a lot of things looked at to try and, I guess, be certain that people were not, there was a high failure rate among students of color. So trying to find out, is the bar exam really testing what it needs to and in the way that it should? Because, it was, again, another horrible, grueling exercise of, sitting there for 2.5 or 3 days answering essay questions. And
what is it supposed to test, aside from memory recall?
Well, that was really it, your knowledge of the law.
Only memory recall, not an ability to demonstrate a way of thinking?
Yes, because you would get a set of facts, and then you had to apply the law and come up with a conclusion. And as we all know, there can be different ultimate conclusions, but you have to be able to back them up with actual law. So yeah, to some extent, but you got to remember the law. There's a lot of it to remember. You don't know necessarily what subject matter is going to be asked the most. I mean, it could be procedure, criminal law, probate, family law, whatever. A lot to remember, and in a short, stressful period. So you pass or don't pass, and that has a big impact. As it turned out, my husband and I and a lot of my friends had a really nice summer in Davis after graduation. Spent a lot of time at the pool with our books that sat quietly next to us, and we did not pass the bar the first time. So that meant having to sort of really get serious and, take it again in the fall, which we did and passed. But that's not necessarily a measure of how good you'll be as a lawyer. That's my opinion, and I think others share it. Not that there shouldn't be a test, but, it can be very disappointing. I know people who took the test multiple times. They would have been great servants in a community. They were bilingual. They understood issues. They knew the people. They just couldn't get that card.
You mean passing on the first time is not a good indication of whether or not you're a good lawyer?
Well,
some firms think so, though, right?
I know. That's probably why at the time a lot of us had no expectation we were going to go into corporate or into a big firm. That's not what I wanted anyway. That wasn't my goal. There were people that did that, of course. They were better students. So I think to some extent it depends on what you want to do with that degree. You want your lawyer to know the law, but, that's why we still have resources, because you have to look it up. The law changes.
Sure.
So what you know for 3 days after you graduate is just a small part of being a good lawyer.
Yeah. And most of our doctors, when they leave the room, they're on their phone Googling stuff anyways, right?
That's not very reassuring.
I mean, they're not memorizing everything because the
Exactly.
resources are there. So,
And I tend to think, I did know some medical students during law school because, affirmative action cases came up opposing affirmative action at the time. And I knew some of the people in the med school who are also regarded as affirmative action admissions. And I used to think, God, those people have to know so much more than we do, and there's so much more at stake. So I admired the people who went to med school.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm remembering this correctly, but were you examining the bar to see if there were, I guess, biases towards, and what did you find?
Yes. Well, I think there was some sense that especially multiple choice tests, those are terrible for anybody, right? For any level of education, I think, because your cultural or other experiences might lead you to look at a question differently than the way it was intended to be answered. So, and I think that's something that's been examined in education, going way back, that some of it is the way in which you are tested and how the questions are phrased and what's used as a context for a question. Obviously in law school, you've had to learn all the, what could be fact situations. And so I think it was, more of an examination and honestly, I can't recall all the details of it now because a lot of it was very mathematical as well, how the questions were weighted at multiple choice, when you got to evaluating the results and giving weight to it is kind of a little more math that law school didn't prepare me for all of that.
Sure.
But it was a very, thorough examination of it. I think the bar exam actually now may be shorter than it was before. So
Easier now.
yeah, I don't think about it anymore. I don't know. I'm sure it's still challenging.
Well, I want to get into how all this experience has led up to what you're doing today, but let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Okay.
Sometimes, even the best of us can slip up. That's why the law offices of Scott Wormuth are here to pick you back up again.
And while they strive to get you the biggest compensation possible, oh my gosh!
Their main concern is your health and recovery. They work closely with doctors and insurance companies to make sure you get the proper medical treatment.
Initial consultations are free, so give them a call.
At the law offices of Scott Wormuth, we're with you all the way.
I'm Scott Wormuth. We've been fighting for your rights for more than 40 years.
All right, we're back with Jeanne. Jeanne, before the break, we were going to get into what you're doing now with all those experiences. But when we come back from the break, we like to ask questions from this deck of cards called Icebreakers, and they're just a fun way for the audience to get to know us a little bit better. So Victoria and I are also going to participate. So here we go. What do the first 30 minutes of your typical day look like?
They look like me struggling to wake up.
For 30 minutes?
For 30 minutes. I usually wake up, and I'm not one that pops out of bed. I sort of think, I guess, just like, okay, what's happening today? What day is it? Sometimes I like to listen to a podcast or even just the news, but usually a podcast in the morning, just because it's the only way I can fit something in.
Okay.
My first 30 minutes is, I think just like spending some time like in bed a little bit and then doing like, brushing teeth, skincare, getting dressed. That's about it, yeah.
Well, I'm very much a morning person. So I was in the military before and like literally would like awake and then roll over and start making your bed. I don't literally do that now, but that's the first thing that I do. Sometimes I'll draw a bath, most times, but a cold bath, because that's like after I work out. I'll draw a cold bath, start coffee, and have that. Yeah, but that's like sort of I forget the book. I think the book is from an admiral, Navy admiral, and it's called Make Your Bed.
Make Your Bed. I saw that. I've read that.
Yeah. And yeah, I would agree. Like it's a way to have a success or a win in the morning right away. And at night, if the whole day is terrible, you come back and there's your bed.
I guess I'm not that particular. I just want to crawl into it. I don't care what it looks like.
Well, if you're watching or listening, what do the first 30 minutes of your typical day look like? Let us know in the comments. So, Jeanne, what has all that led up to, now with what you're doing?
Well, I think it's led me to always think of myself as a leader. Like, I'm just going to take those steps. Those experiences that I've had throughout my life, both in terms of my cultural identity and my gender identity, the expectations the rest of the world has of me, I think I've just learned I can do these things. I can do what I want to do. And there isn't anyone who can limit me in that regard. So I've chosen to be a leader in the community, and now at this moment have chosen to run for city council precisely because I believe our council has lost sight of what it means to be a servant to the community, to listen to the community, to respond to the needs of the whole community. And I think we need someone. I think of myself as a consensus builder. My experience on the redistricting commission was very often that, because that was could at times be a very contentious decision-making time. And so I think of myself as somebody, who can bring people together. That's how I see us being most effective in building a stronger community. So that's my goal right now, is to kind of just take my leadership to a different level.
I see. What are some of your strategies to bring people of differing opinions together?
I think we need to have more community gatherings that are small, but where people just get to know each other a little. I'm actually serving now on the Stop Asian Hate Committee with the Asian Youth Center. And some of what we do is cultural exchanges, art work as a way to bridge different cultures. And, people come together over something like art or music or food, and you begin to see your commonalities rather than your differences. Obviously talking about doing it on a city-wide level, let alone national level, that's pretty challenging, but I think we have to always be working at that. Yes,
we had a guest recently who described a very divided city and what they did to bring it together. Mm-hmm. They asked the people to write about their neighbor who was different from them.
Oh, interesting.
And the majority of people who participated were children. And they read these letters in the city hall, or, and he said that there were tears. And I just thought about that. What would happen today if the children of the world under, threat of war or currently experiencing war, if they just wrote and said, this is what we want for our future, and they could read that, and what that would do to, the people who are doing this, the children's voices, I think, really are impactful and matter. But
very much so. And it's interesting you bring that up, because even here, as I've been canvassing and talking to people, knocking on doors, talking to people, I've encountered a number of young people, like 18 to maybe 30, who feel really left behind. That we've just created a world where they don't see a future. They don't see that, as one person put it to me, an American dream. What's the point of voting? We'll never have anything. It doesn't equate at all to the suffering, for example, of people in Gaza. But I think the decision-making process should be the same, and that is to be looking to the future. We've already messed up pretty well as leaders. I think my generation and maybe a generation before that even, I'm not sure. But certainly I think the young people all over the world need to have a sense of, we're going to protect the climate, the world, we're going to protect the earth itself. We're going to provide them with food. They're going to have health care. They're going to have the opportunity to choose their life's work. We're going to preserve the arts. There's just so much that I think we have ignored for so long, or actively damaged. And we need to listen to those voices.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. We're going to move on, Jeanne, to the final segment of the show, where we get to learn a little bit more about what you like about the San Gabriel Valley. So, Jeanne, this is the SGV3, and we ask you to share your 3 favorite or most memorable places or experiences in the San Gabriel Valley.
Okay. This was hard.
Yeah.
This is really hard. So I hope you're not unhappy that I some of it is category. But let me start with the first one, the San Gabriel Mission, because that's where I, had my beginning religious experiences. Many family members baptized, confirmed, First Communion, married, buried. I have my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my uncle in the mission cemetery. So that's kind of a contemplative place for me, and just the whole sense of the history of, this is like home. It's very central part of, it was a very central part of the community and family. Even to the extent that as kids we used to occasionally, you could get in and ring the bells, and then you better run real fast. I don't think you can do that anymore. But just so many memories. My grandmother's working the fiesta, cooking for days, at the mission fiesta. My aunt was the queen of the fiesta parade. So the mission, definitely. Okay, beyond that, I started thinking about food, and I thought, I really just need to, it's just food in the San Gabriel Valley. And there's everything. You can go, we meet friends from Claremont in Glendora to eat Lebanese food. There are Mexican restaurants, of course, millions of Asian restaurants, Italian food. I don't know, there's everything. I don't think there's anything I can't find to eat.
So the food in the San Gabriel Valley, that's number
food.
2. Okay.
One end to the other. There's food that's very important.
Sure.
The other thing is, the one thing I thought of is the Claremont Colleges complex. Overall, I mean, the city itself has a lot to offer, but the colleges do so many great cultural programs. They have speakers, galleries. It's just a really comfortable place to go, very relaxed, and it offers so much in a kind of intimate place.
And those are really, great institutions of learning.
Yes.
I forget how many colleges are there.
I'm not sure. I know Pomona, Claremont,
McKenna, Harvey
McKenna,
Mudd.
Harvey Mudd. So
Yeah. There's quite a few.
Yeah.
Quite prestigious. And
Yes.
a lot of people or, youth in this area don't even know about them, right? They're not as household names as USC or UCLA.
Right. Small, but it's a really great place, I think, to go if you're if you don't want that huge megalopolis university experience.
Yeah.
Very, very good.
Well, Jeanne, thank you so much for spending this time with us and sharing your story. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I guess the best way really is through my office. Do you want me to leave a phone number? I'm happy.
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay. My phone number is 626-570-8611. And I think that's generally the easiest way. I get so much email, I hesitate to invite more. I can't keep up with it as it is.
500 a day, 1,000 a day?
I started counting the political email. And when I got to like 100 in one day plus text messages, I just thought, okay, this is crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't envy that.
Well, this is all with, the national politics.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you, Russell. I really appreciate it. It was fun.
Yeah, likewise. Well, there you go. Another show in the books. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I really got to see, someone's life journey and all the little things that have, sort of shaped her view and her desire to bring about change in this community and really dedicating herself to the San Gabriel Valley. So thank you to Jeanne for sharing that with us. If you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing. Don't forget to like and share, and you can find the full back catalog of episodes on our website, mysgv.net. And if you want to support the show in a more meaningful way, please do consider becoming a patron on Patreon under MySGV Podcast. And yes, don't forget, I do write a weekly newsletter. I shared this with someone yesterday. They asked me what my open rate was, and then I said, I had a big smile on my face, and she raised her eyebrows and she said, 50%? I said, no, 67. I have about 200 readers, but 67%. And so I write it myself every week. It's just share stories, my personal stories. I introduce the upcoming guests. So please consider signing up for the newsletter. And until next week, we'll see you then. Thank you for joining us on the MySGV podcast. Check out more of our content on our website, mysgv.net. This show was produced by Scott Wormuth, directed by Russell Mano, edited by Victoria Allers, and original music by Yone OG. If you'd like to join us next week as we capture and share more stories from our diverse community, feel welcome.
Nice mother. No, kind of mother.